Hi, this is Brendan Davis from Bedrock Games and the Bedrock blog, and I'm here with Kenny, and we're talking about Return of Condor Heroes, chapters 31 through 35, and we're just gonna get right into it, I suppose. Kenny, where did we leave off last time? We left off. We finished chapter 30, and now we're back at and we're on to 31, and this is the title of the chapter is The Other Half of the Antidote. And the events that occur in this chapter are Huang Rong finally gets her daughter, Gua Zhang, also known as Little Heretic, back from Chi En in the in Passionless Valley Hall. She invokes sort of his memories of Yingu, and she's able to get her to safety by kicking her. And Gong Sun Ji and Li Mochu also return to Passionless Valley, and they conspire together. And Gong Sun just keeps cranking up sort of the evil machinations, and agrees to throw his own daughter in a poison flower patch so that they can get the antidote and he can marry Li Mochu. And his daughter poisons herself in order to get the antidote for Yangua. And by the end of the chapter, Gong Sun ends up stealing the real pill. I glossed over a lot of details here, but I don't know. What did you think of this chapter and this part of the story?
It was pretty bittersweet because I think you have Lua, who is just so sweet and kind. Thinking of all these ways that she can try and get the antidote for Yang Guo, and then having her overhear her own father basically plotting to kill her. So that he could marry Li Mocho was probably pretty heartbreaking for her as well. I mean, it sounds like from the previous chapters that she was a fairly innocent and naive little girl, and she was actually prepared to forgive her father for throwing her down the crocodile pit with Yang Guo earlier on. She was thinking it was just like a moment of passion, like a fit of passion for him. But now that she's actually hearing him, like in cold blood, plotting her the death just so he could marry a beautiful young woman was
Well,
pretty shocking for her.
what was really almost amusing about that scene too is that Li Mocho is even like, "Hey, we don't actually have to kill her. We can just lie about it, and you don't have to lose your daughter." And he's like, "No, no, no, no. That my wife is too shrewd. She'll never believe that." And it's just this. He's almost too extreme even for Li Mocho. In fact, she's sort of angered by his lust for her, and she's just going along with it because she wants the antidote, and she realizes that's the easiest way for her to get the antidote for herself because she's poisoned by the passion flowers.
And I think it's important to note as well, because the Passionless Valley people sect were all secluded and then rarely ventured out into the martial world. They had no idea about Li Mocho's deeds in the Jianghu, right? Or that her nickname was like the Scarlet Serpent deity or whatever, and that she is known for being treacherous and ruthless, and it's funny to see Gong Xunji basically fawning all over this very evil woman without any idea that she's probably going to stab him in the back at the first available opportunity.
Well, that's one of the things I like to think about is sort of what would have happened in an alternate universe where he succeeds in his plan and he defeats the heroes and he marries Li Mochu. I can sort of see her becoming the new leader of Passionless Valley and betraying him, and he ends up at the bottom of a pit, or
I mean, her kung. I don't think Li Mocho's kung fu is probably better than Gong Xunji's. I mean, it's hard to say because they don't really fight or anything, but just from inferred power ranking, shall we say, it feels like Li Mocho is like sort of not very top, but she's near the pinnacle. Whereas Gong Xunji, if you recall earlier on, there was always mentions about the flaws in his kung fu, and now he's also lost the protective chi of his like special technique where he couldn't eat meat.
Yeah, his big technique is gone, so I think that
Yeah,
really weakens him considerably. And Li Mocho, even if she wasn't as powerful as him, she's more conniving, and I think more capable of poisoning him and use. I mean, he's so lusty for beauties that I think if that she could easily use that to sort of sow the seeds of his defeat. But another thing we probably shouldn't skip over, that's sort of a minor thing that happens in this chapter, is Guo Fu is really just not getting along with Cheng Ying and Lu Shuang, and she just you're really starting to see sort of, not only is she deeply flawed and rash as a character because of how spoiled she's been, but it looks like she's not inherited that much of Huang Rong's intelligence, that she's probably more like her father in that respect. She seems to be not like, there's a number of moments in this chapter where she just kind of is, because she's so rash and because she's not putting two and two together, she's impeding her mother's ability to plan and do the things that Huang Rong is so good at doing.
But the thing is, like, Huang Rong is perfectly capable of maneuvering around Guo Jing, because, like, even though Guo Jing's like not very intelligent, so to speak, like, he at least has his is a predictable person, whereas Guo Fu, because she's so spoiled and she's so like extreme and like quick to act and not really thinking about consequences, and just purely is like I would say a bundle of instincts, most of which are negative to other people. Like her mother, doesn't have a good grasp on how to manipulate her so that she fits into her plans. And I think the one of the sort of key points which highlights this is that when Huang Rong gets Guo Shang back, instead of passing it to Guo Fu, her blood daughter, she actually passes it to Ye Luqi. A random Mongolian.
And that scene, I enjoyed that scene because she basically she tricks, the way that she tricks Chien, where he's threatening to kill the baby and he's sort of reliving everything that he's, like, the big sin that he committed, he's reliving again. And Huang Rong, instead of freaking out, starts laughing hysterically, and it's like she's doing her best Yinggu impression, I think, where she's trying to remind him of what he did, and she just basically tells him to kill the baby, and it throws him off, and eventually I think he drops the baby, and then she makes it look like she just kicks the baby to the side, like she doesn't care, but it's really like a gentle, controlled kick, and then Yellow Chi retrieves her. But I don't know, it's just a very sort of fun but also alarming scene, because you have the dire peril that Guo Sheng is in. And
I think by this point, like, Huang Rong is pretty used to it. I mean, she used the same tactic against Limo Cho as well. Like, in the forest, where she pretends she has no regard for the baby at all, and she's attacking without regard, but in reality, she's controlling her strikes so that she doesn't actually hurt the baby. But both Limo Cho and Tien were fooled by her performance into thinking that she doesn't really care at all about the child, and which is quite, I guess, it sort of highlights Huang Rong's sort of cunning and not really patience, but her shrewd mind there, and the control of her acting, I guess, her acting skills there. And one thing worth mentioning here is that throughout all of this sort of her laughing maniacally and trying to make Tien relive his dark days, Guo Fu had no idea what was going on. She's like, "Oh no, my mother's gone mad. What should I do?"
Yeah, no, she has no clue. And again, I think going back to what you were saying about Huang Rong's inability to sort of work around her, a large part of it is, the reason why she can do it with Guo Jing is because he's like a moral person. He's got like a very strong moral center, and his principles are easy, like you said, sort of predictable. With her, she doesn't really seem, I feel like whatever context she's in will kind of shape what behavior like she's doing awful things. She's trying to cripple people. She's behaving like a villain, and it's just the fact that she's surrounded by a righteous family that she doesn't get. She's not necessarily being categorized as one of the bad guys in the story. Do you know what I mean? Like,
see, like in other novels, like this is like the stereotypical spoiled young master character who makes trouble everywhere because they think, oh, I am the most important person in the world. I have strong parents backing me, and it's heroic war, and but the chief of the beggar sect, Huang Rong, is my mother.
No, but I mean you know, and again, there's that scene where she's you know, she tries to cripple Lu Shuang's other leg. You know, it's a and she gets jealous of Cheng Ying, and it's just you know, eventually, you know, she uh I don't know. I mean, would you say she's a bad person, or would you say she's just deeply misguided and rash and just doesn't have the right upbringing?
Oh, I finished the book now, and you know, she sort of has a little redemption arc, but I think even then it was so brief before she got back to her old ways. Then I think that she is genuinely as a person, like, just isn't very nice. I think it's too ingrained in her by now. And I'm kind of surprised that Ye Chi actually agreed to marry her because, like, what is he thinking? Like, I know she's supposed to, like, Gorfu is supposed to be on par in beauty with her mother, but her character leaves so much to be desired for. I mean, yeah, Ye Chi has like Wang Yanping and his sister Yelu. I can't remember her name.
Yellow Yan.
Uh, Yelu Yan, like as sort of comparisons, like for what the sort of like a baseline level for what a decent wife material would be like, right?
Well,
But
I think, well, I wouldn't underestimate the beauty factor as being able to blind somebody to a flaw, but I also think she is feisty, and she is sort of there is maybe I could see someone like him being attracted to
yeah,
sort of
but
the warrior. You know, she's very ready to go. She's very ready to fight. Do you know what I mean? And that's
But Liu Wushang is Liu Wushang is that same archetype as well. But she has her nice sides, and like she's gentle to people, but she's harsh with her words. Whereas Gorfu is harsh with her words and harsh in her actions to people.
yeah.
So yeah, it's sort of like, I mean, the marriage doesn't happen anytime soon, not for a couple of chapters. But it's still one of those things where I just think, like, is she everything that she's displayed makes her out to be like an awful person. And yeah, she has seen most of this. Like, he's seen her trying, like, basically trying to cripple Liu Wushang and like trying to dismiss Chen Ying from as her martial aunt, I think it was, whatever. But it's just
mean,
amusing that.
he's drawn to her for whatever reason. And you know, again, I think again this is something where he has sort of categorized everybody in terms of how, like, the hierarchy of beauty that we've talked about, and I think she is higher up than Lu Shuang, right? So, you know, that would, you know, maybe
But
that's,
below Chen Ying, I think.
I can't remember. We should probably go back and try to chart it out.
We could have like another podcast where we
Yeah.
talk about the beauties of Jin Yong's novels and like try to rank them.
Well, it's just
And see
because
if
he
anyone
does rank
disagrees.
them. It's not. It's like a part of the language that he uses to describe the characters, and I think that that in this case it actually would give us insight into Yellow Cheese thinking, with, you know, because like you say, she is kind of a terrible person.
Well, and
It's
she's
a-
and I guess she's also the daughter of Guo Jing and Huang Rong, and that sort of adds to her street cred, so to speak. Like she is the daughter of two great heroes
You know what?
who
I
have
would know.
saved
I think
the.
that's it. I think that's, if we have to sort of speculate and project, I think the fact that this is an in for him to the Gua family can't be overlooked. I mean, that is, they are like only the most important, you know, couple in existence in the martial world, right? So it's
Yeah.
it's, you know, he probably does want to be close to that. You know, and again, we don't get enough. I mean, we're speculating because we really don't get enough insight into Yellow Cheese.
We see, yeah, we don't really see much of his action. I mean, like if we consider Guo Fu's like separately from her characters, okay, so she's got decent martial arts background. Her parents are influential and presumably rich as well. She is probably a 9 out of 10 on the beauty scale. Yeah, not yeah, beaten only by people like Li Mo and Xiaolong
Xiaolong.
Lu, but you know, those are like 1 in a million type beauties. But yeah, she's fairly decent looking. So like those are three fairly strong points for why someone would marry her. But then like it's like I don't know if it's like a scale and it's like, well, she's a bit of a bitch, but she's got these three things going for her. Maybe it's not too bad.
I don't know. I mean, I think we could do a whole character examination of Yellow Chi to sort of try to figure this out. That would be, you really could sort of, because it is weird, because he is kind of a heroic guy, and it's just odd that. But again, I think he might be interpreting some of her bad behavior as as heroic behavior. Do you know what I mean? In that world, it's sort of easy to sort of,
Yeah.
especially if you already like somebody, to sort of see, to see heroic passion where really it's something much darker. And she's almost. I mean, she's kind of basically a bully. I would say that's sort of the type of personality that I get from Guafu. Is she behaves almost like one of these characters that just goes in and takes what they want and does what they want and doesn't, is loudmouthed, and she's not particularly refined either. She's very far removed from her mother in terms of personality.
It's funny because earlier in the novel we had the whole thing on the Peach Blossom Island where Huang Rong was refusing to teach Shang Guo kung fu, so she was teaching him the scriptures and all these Confucius texts or whatever to try and settle his rebelliousness. But then there's her daughter, she does nothing of the sort. Apparently, she just teaches none of that seemed like the refined scholarly stuff never seemed to make it into her teachings in the upbringing.
Is it karma for Huang Rong? Is this sort of her past actions with Yanguo and maybe not being as motherly to him, sort of coming back to haunt her in the form of her daughter? Is that?
Yeah, I think it's just. Well, we do know for a fact that while Guojin dotes on his daughter, he doesn't spoil her. But Huang Rong is the one who's always shielding her from everything. I don't know. I see no reason why Huang Rong would try to. Maybe she's compensating for the fact that she was not orphaned, but she was left motherless a lot as a child because I think her mother died fairly early into her childhood, right?
Well, her mother died fairly early, and her father was kind of like the supreme weirdo of the martial world. So.
Yeah. So I think she may be trying to overcompensate for the motherly care thing on Huang. For Guofu. Yeah.
I'd say, given Huang Rong's background, she turned out a-okay. Huang Rong turned out pretty good as a mother, given all the stuff she's been through. Her only failing is that she was maybe too good to her daughter. But in a setting like this, that's that's consequences. When your daughter knows, the peach blossom kung fu, it can be an issue. So I think, but getting into the next chapter, because I don't want to get too far behind. This is chapter 32, which is What is Love? Which I always think of that damn song from Saturday Night Live. That's, so throughout the novel, Lee Mo-chu sings this song, and those are the first. What is love is the start. I would really love to see somebody do a fan version of that song, but with the lyrics from Lee Mo-chu's poem, because I think you could do it. I'm pretty sure you could do it.
I actually want to see if we can find did any other TV series have Lee Mo-chu singing that song? I want to see what their impression of what it would have sounded like, just as a curiosity thing, because I think it would be interesting.
I can't remember if she sings it in any of the series.
Because it's mentioned so often. There was a scene previously where Yang Guo, Liu Wuxian, and Chen Ying were sort of hiding from Lee Mo-chu, and she comes by and there's a music duel between Chen Ying and her, and she sings a song and uses the internal energy to break the zither or the Guxin or whatever it was, and
I think it was a Guxin, but that is a zither. So, I think that. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, me and Adam are going to be doing the 2006 Return of Condor Heroes, so I'm going to keep an eye out. I do this all the time. I try to keep an eye out, and then I forget that I'm supposed to be watching for something. But I'll try to remember and see if they do have her singing. Usually my impression of Lee Mo-chu is that instead of singing, they have her laughing. I feel like that's what I always associate Lee Mo-chu with, is that sort of martial laugh in the back. Not like the maniacal martial laugh, not the sort of, more friendly, I'm an eccentric person.
But I just feel like the song is so important for her character, and I don't know, it's so integral that I feel like the fact that the TV series don't show it is possibly a failing on their part, because the lyrics of the song, at least from the translations that we read of it, they sort of highlight partially why she became the way she is today, just from all the heartbreak that she's gone through. And and as a theme of love as well for all of the characters in the book. I mean, in this chapter, I think Lu Wushang not reminisces, but thinks back to the lyrics of Li Mosho's song, and like reflects on her feelings for Yang Guo on that, and Chen Ying's feelings for Yang Guo on that. Like it's fairly important, I'd say.
Well, here's what we should do. If anybody's listening and anybody is familiar with any of the series and remembers whether they have a section where Li Mochu sings this song, definitely point us in that direction. I have the on DVD. I have the 1983 version and I have the 2006 version, and I don't remember it in either of those, but that doesn't mean they're not there. I just might be failing to recall them. And I don't remember it being in. There was a recent one they did in 2014. I don't remember it coming up in that, but again, I could be mistaken. So if somebody does remember, definitely point it out. I guess another possibility is they always have sort of the beginning theme and the end theme on these series, and it's possible there's a version that has the Li Mochu song as like the end credits or the, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But I'm not sure. But I agree with you. I think it's a really important part of the story because she sings it all the time, and and it's one of these things where you really are trying to imagine what that would look like, because it's like in the middle of a battle and she's singing, and that would be incredibly cinematic if done right. So I think it would be interesting. But anyways, the chapter is called "What Is Love," and this is the chapter where Lua kills herself on her father's sword after I think she overhears Zhao Longnu and Yang Guo talking about their love and feels despondent, and and then she makes the decision to kill herself, and or that might have been earlier in the chapter, I can't remember, but either way, she kills herself on her dad's sword this chapter. And we also learn that the Indian monk who's producing the cure for the passion flower was killed by Li Mochu at the very moment when he found the antidote. And upon hearing this, Yang Guo becomes despondent. There's this enormous fight at the precipice with all of the heroes and Gong Sun, and Zhao Longnu manages to convince Gong Sun to give her the pill, and Yang Guo, who's despondent over the recent news, just throws the pill into the ravine. There's a when Chi Chan-chi finds out about her daughter, she just sets the whole place ablaze, and Li Mochu, a little bit down the road, ends up throwing herself into the flames and dies. And a lot of people dying in sort of suicide type conditions in this chapter. We also get the wicked couple dying in the pit. Gong Sun and Qian-chi fight, and she lures him into a trap, that she traps him in the hole that he had trapped her in, and he manages to pull her down with him. And then we have the whole heartbreak cliff scene where after all this sort of drama at Passionless Valley, Yang Guo and Zhao Longnu go on a stroll, and Huang Rong has sort of talked to Zhao Longnu and convinced her to get Yang Guo to eat this intestine severing grass, which she thinks is possibly the cure for the passion flower, because she discovered that the Indian monk was clutching it in his hands when he died. And so Zhao Longnu strolls with Yang Guo. She basically reminds him, hey, do you remember when you said you would listen to everything I said? Is that still a thing? When I took you as a disciple, you remember? And he says, oh yeah, of course. And then they sleep, and then when he wakes up in the morning, she's gone. They spend the whole day looking for her. They find the bodies of the wicked couple, and then he finds a package left from her at one of the cliffs near Heartbreak Cliff, and inside is the intestine severing grass, and there's also a message carved into the stone, which is one of these sort of common tropes from Wuxia, where a great hero can just carve a message effortlessly into the stone
with a sword nonetheless.
And she basically says, we'll wait for me for 16 years, and remember your promise to me. And so there's a whole sort of drama between him and Huang Rong. He's initially a little bit skeptical. He kind of yells at Huang Rong and talks about how he doesn't like her, and then she manages to convince him that what's happened is Zhao Longnu must have met this divine nun from the southern seas. Because remember, Zhao Longnu is poisoned, and that's the big thing that motivated Yang Guo to throw his antidote into the ravine. And she says, "Oh, if she's met this divine nun, then the woman obviously took to her as a disciple, because a divine nun only comes to the mainland once every 16 years, and so she's probably healing her right now. And in 16 years, you guys will be reunited." And Huang Rong comes up with an elaborate reason for why he can't go to visit the divine nun directly, and he eventually agrees, and he eats the intestine severing grass. And he stays behind in Passionless Valley with Cheng Ying and Lu Shuang. They become sworn siblings, and he teaches Lu Shuang the Jade Maiden principles and the techniques, because she's technically part of the same sect as him. And together they all purge the Valley of the Passion Flowers. And then Yang Guo ends up departing from Passionless Valley and reunites with his eagle brother. And they end up going to the southern coast, where he trains for years to master some. I think he tries to master he's at the wooden sword phase of the training, right? And his kung fu improves tremendously during this time, and then that's the end of the chapter, and then we get to chapter 35, or I'm sorry, 34.
33.
Oh yeah, I'm way off on numbers. I apologize.
Yeah, but we just have to say that the first two chapters in this sort of block of chapters is very meaty. A lot of stuff happens in it. That's all very important to the story, and we can't really gloss over it when we talk about it. I think the other couple of chapters coming up are relatively lighter on key plot points. So in chapter 32, I mean. The first death in the chapter is Lua killing herself on her father's sword, and not because I don't think it's because she overheard Yang Guo and Xiao Lu flirting or still talking sweet nothings or whatever. I think it's just because
I confused myself. She did that. She ran over to the cliff the first time in the chapter before because of that, and I got my wires crossed.
Yeah, I think this time it was just because. She saw that Yang Guo was basically unwilling to hurt her, and that he seemed to want to give the pill to her instead, or not take the pill. Rather than like killing her to get the pill, like he was willing to let her live and forego the pill. And I think she was touched by his sacrifice, I say, but touched by his actions, and decided that she would kill herself. And have a peaceful death. I'm not really sure what the exact thought process there. Maybe it's something we need to reread. But that's sort of the high level what I vaguely remember from that scene.
Well, she killed herself on her dad's sword, which is sort of ironic. Well, I don't know if it is ironic, because her dad doesn't even care really. Her dad uses her body as a shield to deflect.
Oh yeah, immediately after she uses his dead daughter's corpse to block his wife's weapons.
It's honestly one of the most heartbreaking character deaths, because to have her used as just a shield for her mother's spinning stones, her palm seeds, the date seeds, the stone date seeds. It's just, I don't know. It's just, you just get this image of it's there's just no dignity in it after that. It was one of the more difficult moments in the story.
And she's had a pretty tragic life as well, so it's really hard to not feel sorry for her. I mean, we sort of feel sorry for Yang Guo and Xiao Nu in terms of how they always have things coming in between them, but Lua is, in my mind, is one of the most tragic heroines in this story at the moment, just because she's from a young age, she lost her mother, so she thinks, finds out that her father had trapped her mother in a cave, or killed her mother, and then gets thrown by her father and down into a pit of crocodiles, and then the father plots with a random woman to kill her so that he could have the antidote. I mean, she has a lot of stuff happening to her that's not very pleasant, and it's kind of amazing that despite all of this, she still keeps her sort of sweet disposition and her caring for Yang Guo. Like she's obviously clearly aware of Yang Guo and Xiaolong Liu's relationship, and that Yang Guo will never love anyone else other than Xiaolong Liu, but yet she's still willing to do to perform all these sacrifices for him to make sure that he can live a happy life. And it's honestly like I think her character is one of the most tragic story arcs in this book so far.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Because she's a very likable character, and she's very, she's very selfless in her behavior throughout the story, and she's constantly helping the protagonist. So you really feel for her when she dies. And I guess that's an interesting contrast to the next person who kills themselves, which is Li Mochu, who, when the place catches on fire, I think Reverend Yi Dang seals one of her acupoints so that she can't cause too much trouble, but she's able to still kind of move around. And eventually, this moment arises where she's kind of going to get her comeuppance, it looks like. People start encircling her, and she... I think she tries to throw herself on one of the Wu brothers' swords, but he's not really able to commit to killing her, and he backs off. And she sees the fires, and she I think she mistakes, I forget which couple it is, but she mistakes somebody. She mistakes people for her former love and his lover.
I think for some reason she looks at Yang Guo and Xiaolong Liu and somehow sees them as being her former lover and the former lover's wife, basically. And then she goes like mental and runs into the fire while singing that song. I think it was. Is that what happened there?
Yeah, that sounds right. She's singing the "Oh Mortals, What Is Love," and she burns to death. And it's a pretty dramatic death. I still don't know how I feel about this death for Li Mochu, but this is one that's always sort of perplexed me. But it's very dramatic, and people feel sad over her death. You don't get this sense that people are satisfied that she's died. They feel sort of bad for her, and then there's the other couple that the wicked couple who kill each other. And it's sort of like this.
I think the saying here is that being hosted by her own petard there, because she basically set the trap for Gong Xunzi, and in the moment that the trap succeeds, Gong Xunzi manages to drag her down with him, basically, right?
Yeah. He manages to. It's kind of like the scene in Lord of the Rings where Gandalf gets dragged in by the Balrog. I think that's sort of how I imagine it, where there's like this moment where it seems like she's won, and then boom, she gets sucked in. I think. It's a fitting end for both of them. I think there's a hierarchy of sympathy in these deaths where you have the who you feel the worst for, Li Mochu, who you still feel bad for, but you understand she probably deserves to die, and then the wicked couple who just you could really care less. You're quite happy to have them dead. And then there's the whole scene at Broken Hearted Cliff too, which I think is kind of the pivotal moment in the chapter for me. And the actual thing that not Li Mochu, that Xiaolong Nu carves into the stone is 16 years from now we will meet here. The love between husband and wife is profoundly great. Do not break your promise. Xiaolong Nu addresses husband Yang Long. And I don't know. I think it's when I first encountered this part of the story, it really confused me because it took me a while to understand what Huang Rong was trying to say. Not this time, but like the very first time I ever encountered it. It was I just found it a very confusing explanation for what happened. But now I really like this idea that she's spun about the divine nun who's possibly healing Xiaolong Nu for 16 years, and Yang Guo is sort of clinging to this idea and waiting. I don't know.
Well,
It's
and it's also because the way what's important is that the passage on the cliff was actually written by Xiaolong Nu, and not something concocted by Huang Rong. Xiaolong Nu wrote 16 years, and we find out later why she actually wrote that text. But and I think that's why Yang Guo clings to the hope that because Xiaolong Nu said it herself. And he recognizes her handwriting due to the special way that she writes Yang Guo. Something about the way she does
there's
like
an extra stroke or something, right? In
yeah,
one of the characters.
an extra bit or curve or whatever that makes it distinct to her handwriting, and he obviously trusts her enough that if she says 16 years, she'll mean 16 years. And even though he has a bit of doubts, I think what Huang Rong's story does is make him believe, oh, there is a justification for why she said 16 years, and that's sort of what he clings on to for throughout the next chapter or so.
Yeah, I would agree. I would agree. I think I don't know. It's an interesting sort of. I don't know. I just it's a very unique moment in the story.
We can sort of guess that Huang Rong is spinning a white lie here for Yang Guo, but at the same time, it's like I'm not really sure. Like maybe there is really a divine nun.
That's what's so clever about it. But I think what makes it seem like a lie is the fact that nobody seems to know who this divine nun is except for.
And it's exactly 16 years. She goes to the mainland once every 16 years.
No, granted, in this genre, there could be a divine nun who comes to the mainland once every 16. That sort of thing can happen, and it could align exactly with the situation. But it just seems, also the way that Huang Rong introduces it when she thinks about it for a moment, she sort of reads the message and then she starts congratulating Yang Guo. She says, "Oh, congratulations!" And it's just a very odd way to sort of lead into that topic. I would think if it were not a lie, that she wouldn't start with the congratulations. She would I don't know. It just seems like an odd start.
Well, I think in like certain Chinese stories, starting with congratulations is a very common thing to do. I'd say when it's sort of, I don't know. It's just something that I've seen happening in other stories as well. It's mostly in the context of like a subordinate congratulating their lord on something and then explaining why, to the emperor, for example, on why this is a good thing, and then usually whoever's being congratulated laps it up. It might be a scheme or whatever, but
it's usually accompanied with a lie, is what you're saying. It's usually
or or some sort of misinterpretation on why this is a great thing. Basically, anytime anyone starts with congratulations, you have to be a bit wary about what they say afterwards.
It's like how people will sometimes try to slip a criticism in with a compliment. It's just the way of getting the lie in smoothly. But yeah, it definitely feels kind of odd. I think. But then we get this nice closure with him and Lu Shuang and Cheng Ying, where they stay together in the valley. I think for like a month or something, and he trains Lu Shuang, and they eradicate the passion flowers together. I think it's just nice that they have sort of the three of them have this firm relationship that stands throughout the novel, and it also kind of, I don't know, it sort of buffers Yang Guo a little bit during this lonely period where he's just been once again. The whole book is sort of oriented around these reunions and separations between him and Xiaolong Nu, and now we get the like truly crippling separation where 16 years. And
this is the only like defined separations. For the other ones, like maybe he can find her, and it's a couple of months, couple of years or whatever. But this time, like we have an exact date. 16 years is a very long time. Like, how many 16 years does a human being have, right?
Well, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just thinking like, and this time it's in for the long haul type of thing. So,
and in fact, I mean, he after he spends time with them in Passionless Valley, he roams Jianghu. He meets up with Brother Eagle, and then you just have this whole extended period where he's training by the sea for like 6 years on and then we don't even find out really what happens to him until well into the next chapter. And it's interesting because, again, we're going to go into the next chapter. We are kind of running out of time, so we might have to speed through chapters 33, 34, and 35. But I feel like when he does return in chapter 33, which I'll give an overview in a moment, he almost doesn't feel like the protagonist anymore. Would you agree with that? That there's sort of this he's like at such a high level that. Do you know what I'm saying?
It's like well, in chapter 33, so we'll keep talking about that now. So we introduced to 3 people entering an inn, and it's full because everyone's like sort of trying to escape from the war, or the roads are blocked or whatever. I can't remember the reason why, but they're sort of exchanging stories in the night about the Eagle Hero.
Yep.
And when we find out that the 3 people who entered were actually Guofu, Guoshan, and Guopolu.
Yeah, and Guoshang and Guopolu are like 15 or 16 now. This is like
this is like 15 years after the previous.
Yeah, because she was a baby in the last chapter. So
yeah. And so these people are always telling stories about the Eagle Hero, which we can probably guess. I mean, like, as a reader, we know that Eagle Hero probably means Zhang Guo, right?
Well, and even Guo Fu mentions Yang as his possible surname at one point, right? Doesn't she say that?
Yeah, but I think she's in denial as well because she doesn't want to accept that Yang Guo is a brilliant martial artist who's chivalrous and helping everyone around the world. Because the stories are telling of him like, he sneaks into this place and killed the corrupt official, and then he manages to arrest the prime minister and like judge him in the court, and before running off with a gang of people, and and then turning people's skin green by scaring them so much, basically. And we hear all these outlandish tales about his deeds. I mean, it's sort of painted as a sort of mythical.
Oh. Can you hear me, Kenny?
Basically on par with. Oh, hello?
Oh, yeah, there was just a little bit of a technical issue there. No, can you hear me now?
Yeah. Yep.
So, no, but you were saying he's basically reached the level of a myth at this point.
Yeah. So throughout chapter 33, a lot of it is dedicated to them, everyone talking about this Eagle Hero, and Guo Shang, who is, I don't know if we're told her nickname at this point, but she's basically the Little Eastern Heretic, sort of named after her grandfather in a sense, who's the Eastern Heretic. And she wants to meet this Eagle Hero, and one of the people in the inn, who we find out is Big Head Ghost, I think it was, says, if you want to see the Eagle Hero, come with me. And she Guo Shan basically just runs after him, and despite Guo Fu trying to stop her, Guo Shan manages to get away, and there's a whole scene where she meets with the ghosts of the Western Cave, Western Mountain.
Yeah, Ghost of Zhishan, right?
Yeah, and it's like basically it's a group of 10 people who are like sworn brotherhood type of thing. There's some women there, so it's like sisterhood as well or whatever. But and then it turns out that they actually have an agreement to meet and fight with the Eagle Hero, which is why they're all gathered here. And then this is why the big-headed ghost was heading in the area. So they decided to set along the way to the meeting point, but along the way they actually run into some people from the 5 Shi brothers from the 10,000 Beasts Manor, which is quite imposing. And then they're basically like a group of animal trainers, and they seem to be doing something in the forest, and they refuse to let the ghost pass through the road. And the ghost, like being sort of arrogant, haughty people, like, why are you not letting us through? We're not going to listen to you and go around the forest. So there's a little fight scene there, and they set fire, and the ghosts set fire to the forest and to scare the animals away, because the animals are, obviously trained to fight as well, and they're trying to kill the ghosts. And because of this, the Shi brothers' plans of sort of trapping a 9-tailed fox to cure one of the internal injuries of their third brother fails, because the fox manages to escape the encirclement when all the animals are panicking from the fire. So there's like a massive fight scene. At the end of it, the Eagle Hero shows up, and we get a description of this guy who's really ugly looking, and he obviously looks nothing like Yang Guo we know, but we also, if you're attentive to the story, you should know that Yang Guo has that weird human skin mask that he got from Chen Ying very early on in the story.
Who got I think got it from Wang Yaoshi, right? Wasn't that I think it was
Huang Yaoshi was the person who invented it.
And it makes him look pretty creepy. But and again we are getting sort of low on time, so we'll try to get through this one quickly. But for me, one of the key things in this chapter is the personality of Guo Shang sort of really becomes clear, and you realize that she is the complete opposite of Guo Fu. And you also get a sense of Guo Polu's personality, and he's not terribly impressive. I mean, he's not particularly offensive in any way either. He just doesn't really... I don't know. He's sort of... There's no real spark.
He's very timid. Yeah, like he's very timid, and he's always caught between the arguments between Guo Fu and Guo Shang, and Guo Shang and Guo Fu they clash a lot because of their personalities. Guo Shang is sort of reminds you of Yang Guo a little bit in this youth. Like she's very open with her opinions, and also isn't afraid of insulting people, which is why she's got that little heretic nickname. And she's also shown to be quite kind-hearted because she cares. There's this little scene in the fights where she's handing around an animal hat because the animals have been trained to not attack people, and she's shown as quite a sweet girl.
But she's also very eccentric, even at that. Like you said, they call her Little Heretic, and she's kind of strange. Even Huang Rong sort of regards her as strange, and Huang Rong is the daughter of Huang Yaoshi. So I mean, but I think in the next chapter we find out a lot of this is a product of the fact that they don't spoil Guo Polu or Guo Shang.
They learn from Guo Fu, basically.
Which is pretty true to life. I've seen this a lot with different families where the second or third child is raised much differently than the first. And I think also I don't know, as much as we get a lot more of Guo Fu's really difficult personality, but the one thing that you at least start to get by this point with her is you at least kind of have to respect her personality because it has consequences. You know what I mean? Guo Polu is inoffensive, but he's also not somebody that you could walk all over because he doesn't feel like he's going to do anything. But Guo Fu is somebody that you would, if you were in her presence, you wouldn't want to set her off because it might lead to bad things happening, and it's just easier to placate her. And and we just get more of that over the next several chapters with her. But yeah. So I guess the other big thing is, I felt that the ghosts of Xishan, they kind of remind me a lot of the Seven Freaks.
Seven Freaks, yeah, definitely.
And but I don't know. Did you have any additional thoughts on this chapter? Any?
No, we should probably move on to.
Okay.
Chapter.
All right.
Because there's a bit of meaty stuff in the chapter 34 as well. I think the key points in this chapter. So a high-level summary is that the Yang Guo mediates a dispute and agrees to help find the nine-tailed fox to help cure the Lion King's injuries, which involves him going to the Black Marsh with Guo Shang, who follows along. They meet Yinggu, and then Monkey Ding comes along with dying Qian, who was injured by Jinlun, and Yang Guo promises to find Double Tongue in order for Yinggu to actually hand over the nine-tailed foxes, and we learn a lot about the story of what happened between Double Tongue and Yinggu and the tragic death of their child, basically. And there's a little bit of martial arts competition between Double Tongue and Yang Guo. I mean, this is where we learn that he's mastered a new martial art called the melancholy palms, basically.
The melancholic sad palm.
The translation's a little bit off there. It sounds so much more impressive in Chinese, I have to say.
But it stems from his longing for Xiaolongnu, right? That's the idea, and that's why Zhu Batong has difficulty mastering a couple of the techniques in it, right? Because he has no such longing for his wife. He's not familiar with.
He's not married for once.
But for his significant other person, that he's been running away from all these years. But in the end, they both agree to forgive Zhubatong.
So Yanguo manages to lure Double Tongue back to meet with Yinggu, and they both so Double Tongue and Yinggu both forgives Tien, who dies in peace, which is a nice bit of closure there if you have sort of followed his antics from Return of Legend of the Condor Heroes.
I like how we're getting this closure with a lot of these great figures from the first story, and I particularly enjoy seeing Yingu again. And she's a really, in the one hand, she's kind of a bad person because she never relinquishes this grudge she has, but the grudge is fairly reasonable. I mean, somebody palmed her child to death, and then Reverend Yiding refused to heal the child because he wanted to fight in a competition. So I think her grievance is one of the most understandable grievances in the whole story. And it's nice to, and then for no apparent reason, Zhubatong just avoids her and doesn't so she's left lonely in her remaining years. And I think that number one, Zhubatong sort of casts a new shade on it, where he you can sort of quibble over whether this jives with what he actually did, but his explanation is that he doesn't have the face now to go before Reverend Yiding and Yinggu, and that's why he's avoiding her. Is that he's sort of ashamed of his actions on a certain level, and I don't know. I think that him sort of returning to her is one of the nicer moments in the story. You don't think you're going to get that kind of closure with a guy like Zhubatong, and so it's kind of nice to see it happen. But yeah, I don't know. Any other thoughts on this one?
No, I think we covered all the main points. Obviously, we were glossing over a lot of things. So I think the names of the 17 stances, I think it was, in the Melancholic Sad Palms were all based on like a poem or something, I think it was. And it was,
go ahead.
Yeah, I'm saying a lot of them they're definitely very sort of poetic idioms, which are very hard to translate. Like I say, it definitely sounds better in the original language, but the translators have done a pretty good job here as well, I thought.
Well, we learn a lot of cool stuff about his martial arts. Number one, he really goes against the grain and the traditions of the martial world. Like, he just is not he has a very abnormal fighting style. And one of the things that earlier in the story he had done was he tried to make techniques around a poem, and he just has kind of elaborated on this idea, I think, at this point. And it's a very sort of, it's a really cool aspect of the story, and it's one of those things that translates very well onto screen in wuxia movies. You always have this blending of poetry, scholarship, and the sword that really seems to work. And I like how it ties with the events that are going on. I like how his the melancholic palm is related to his desire to see Xiaolong Nu again. So again, but we probably should speed up because we are getting close to our next podcast. So we apologize if we're there. Like Kenny said, this is a meaty chapter and a lot of really important stuff happens. But Reverend, not Reverend Yideng, Monk Chien basically finally has his redemption in a way, and he dies because he was injured while investigating Dali, because we learned that the Mongols have been advancing through Dali because they couldn't get through Zhangyan, and so that sort of brings us to the next chapter where you have the big there's a bunch of stuff that happens that sort of wraps up the previous chapter where Yanguo gives Guozhang 3 needles, telling her that she can use each one to make a wish, and she uses up 2 of them, one to see his face, which he shows her, and then one to get him to promise to return on her birthday, which is going to be at the same time as this big heroes banquet that they're having, or heroes summit. And the whole reason that her and her siblings were out there in the first place was to go invite Cui Chuji to come and preside over the summit, and he ends up sending one of his disciples instead. So Yanguo and Guozhang go back, and there's a the Shi family holds a banquet for them, and they bring the the two foxes and use them to heal. What was it, third brother's
Yeah, the
injury?
third of the Lion King or whatever it was.
And he was injured by Huadu, right? That was the person who injured him, I think.
Yes, it was the one who injured. Yeah.
And during the banquet, we hear this ape scream, and then we hear Guofu shouting, and she ends up getting in a tussle with Shi Mengji. She really seriously injures him and doesn't seem to think anything of it. I think she basically hits him in the chest with a sword or something. But he ends up
And in the
being
back, I think it was like
Was it the
I think
back?
it was like quite close. Yeah.
But it
I
was a
think it was in the
terrible
back.
injury, right? It was like a
It
really
was, yeah.
bad.
It was apparently that I think the description said that if it was like 2 inches deeper or whatever, that would have been his life gone.
And she thinks nothing of it. It's just like, get out of my way, just sort of. And this causes some distress for Guoxiang, but eventually she goes back with her sister. And before the Heroes Summit, though, Chief Lu is killed by Huadu on the outskirts of the city. And we should say at this point that Guo Jing has been fending off the Mongol advance from this city for ages now, right? That is sort of the, he's basically
I think all 15 years basically it's been getting.
and so they're hosting a heroes summit, and Chief Lu is killed by Hudu, and then we learn that Guo Shang was really close to Chief Lu, so she basically goes to honor his memory at a temple. She's nearly kidnapped by Niamo Zheng. Guo Fu goes to retrieve her, and the two of them are attacked by this Niamo Zheng character, who now has just got crutches because his legs are missing, and he's killed by, we don't know for sure yet, but Yang Guo basically kills him with a needle from a distance, and so then we have the Heroes Summit when Guofu and Guoshang come back to the town. And during the Heroes Summit, because it's Guoshang's birthday, she decides not to attend. And instead, all of Yang Guo's friends that he sends there have sort of a mini Heroes Summit with her for her birthday. And it's kind of a charming scene. It's sort of this, like all these really eccentric, really shady characters from the martial world are hanging out with her, and they're bringing her gifts, and it's, I don't know, she again, I think a lot of what's going on with her character is really linked to that moment when she was taken as a child and fed the leopard's milk by Yango and Li Mochu, and she had all these really abnormal things happen, and I think it just led to a very eccentric personality forming. And so she's hanging out with a motley crew while her family are sort of presiding at a banquet. And one of the gifts that she gets, though, is this 1,000-year-old snow ginseng, and she decides to give it to her mom and her father because they've suffered so much, and she's young and she hasn't really had any hardships. And then there's a moment at the end of the chapter where Guojing and Huang Rong debate which one of them should take it, and they're both trying to be selfless and give it to the other. And then they say, "Oh, you know what? Let's save it for after the battle because people will be injured and we might need it." And so that's pretty much the bare bones of the chapter. I might have missed one or two key things, but I don't know. What did you think of this part of the book?
No, I really enjoyed the mini hero summit that Guoshang had as well. It was yeah, because I think at first it was like Guopolu who went to see it, and he came back with like an answer and said, "Oh, she's having her own hero summit there," and like everyone's really confused, like, "What are you talking about?" But yeah, and I kind of really appreciate what Yang Guo's doing in the background here. I mean, when he's fulfilling a promise, he goes the whole way. Apparently, like he makes a big deal out of everything, and we'll see more of this in the next chapter.
Yeah.
We should talk about next time, but yeah. I really do enjoy that, she's a little heretic and she is doing all these weird things that her parents just have no idea what's going on. It's just, it's quite amusing, I thought.
And yeah, so I think that it's I don't know, I quite like this part of the story. I feel like, I mean, we're getting really close to the end, obviously, and we only got 5 more chapters, and again, I'm sorry, but we are running out of time, so I'm afraid we're probably gonna have to wrap it up fairly quickly. But yeah, I thought this was a good chapter, and I think that it was nice to see Nemo Shung sort of get his just desserts, and and that mini Heroes Summit was a funny sort of moment in the story, and also a chance for us to kind of see the martial world now. Do you know what I mean? To sort of see that things have evolved, that there are these other eccentric heroes that are now sort of rising up, and a lot of them are friends of Yangua, and so it's I cannot understate how many new characters get introduced in these chapters. There's a host of people with names like Merciless Killer, Priestess Sheng Ying, and Turning Wheel. I can't remember the rest of his name, but the Turning Wheel guy, and
the ghost that uses like an account book as a weapon.
Oh
with
yeah,
like
he's got the iron account book where he keeps all the debts people owe him, and then there's some real eccentric characters. But yeah, so we'll probably wrap it up here, and we'll because we have to get on and do our Chinese ghost story podcast. But I think that this has been a lot of fun to talk about the story, because normally I think we don't have a chance. It's a niche interest, and so you don't often get the chance to talk about this with other people, and you sort of either watch it or talk or read it in a vacuum. And so it's nice to kind of share it and see that there are other people out there that are interested in it as well, and hear from people. And so we'll be back next week with the last 5 chapters. I would encourage everybody who's been following along that hasn't read the book to maybe read the book in before checking out the next podcast, and if you don't, maybe watch some of the Return of Condor Heroes series, or there have been movies based on it, but I think you're better off with the series, to be honest. And yeah, so we'll be back on next week. We'll be on in a little bit with a Chinese ghost story, and I'm sure we have plenty of other stuff planned this week. So we will talk to you later.